Ladies and gentlemen, I joined the Democratic Alliance because I could no longer stand back and watch my country being destroyed by the ANC corruption, failure and arrogance. When I was approached by the DA to stand as Johannesburg mayoral candidate, it was not out of deep desire to save my country that I accepted this undertaking. Part of my acceptance of this undertaking was my belief in Mmusi Maimani's vision of one South Africa for all. I had no political aspiration at the time and have subsequently turned down numerous requests to stand for leadership positions in the Democratic Alliance. My decision to stand as a mayoral candidate was not motivated by desire to hold political office, but out of a desire to serve the residents of Johannesburg and get our city to work again. This is why I've always said, when Johannesburg works, South Africa works. I'm a liberal. I've devoted my life to the advancement of the free market economy, and I maintain a fundamental belief in the inalienable rights of every South African as recorded in the Bill of Rights of our Constitution. I believe that the only way to expand individual freedom and broaden access to opportunity is to grow the economy and provide more of our people with the dignity of work. And yet, I believe that a capable state has the responsibility to act proactively to address the legacy of inequality that persists 25 years after the fall of apartheid. Above all, I believe that my devotion to liberalism is not at odds with my desire to ensure that we live in a more just and equal South Africa. However, I'm gravely concerned that the DA I signed up to is no longer the DA that has emerged out of this weekend's Federal Council. The DA no longer represents the party that is able to achieve what I desire most, a movement that can save South Africa, unseat the ANC, and deliver one South Africa for all. Without this, I'm deeply concerned for the future of South African politics. The DA has taken a resolution at this weekend's Federal Council meeting to question the role of the party in governance relationship I find myself in, and the way in which we communicate on that relationship. This follows the expression of views by a number of DA public representatives that these arrangements are undermining the DA's message and contributed to its electoral decline. I regard this to be the worst kind of short-sighted thinking, even by the very low bar set in recent times. This position includes no perspectives of the residents of Johannesburg and what they want for the city. This has simply been ignored. I maintain that coalitions are the future of South African politics. For a political party to back away from such arrangements 18 months before a local government election that will invariably produce more coalitions is tantamount to declaring itself to be unsuitable for the future of this country. The election of Helen Zille as chairperson of Federal Council represents a victory for people in the DA who stand diametrically opposed to my beliefs and value system. And I believe those of most of South Africans of all backgrounds. I cannot reconcile myself with a group of people who believe that race is relevant in the discussion of inequality and poverty in South Africa in 2019. I cannot reconcile myself with people who do not see that South Africa is more unequal today than it was in 1994. I cannot reconcile myself with people who fail to realize that we have a patriotic duty to unseat the ANC and save our country before it is too late. With this grouping of people succeeding in their efforts to take over the DA, I have no doubt whatsoever that they will move to collapse these governance arrangements. At the heart of the matter will be the proper agenda that this multi-party that I represent executed. I've stood in front of halls filled with upper-income Johannesburg residents, without exception, understand the need to address the unsustainable inequality in our country. Despite this, some members of the DA caucus in Johannesburg have suggested that we prioritize the needs of suburban residents above providing dignity to those forgotten people who remain without basic services 25 years after the end of apartheid. It is clear to me that in the same way that the review's conclusions were determined from day one, any process of reviewing this coalition arrangement is similarly predetermined. I say this with certainty because I've had this to lead the seven-way minority government without a solid mandate from the DA for the past 3 years. From the very first day I took office, this coalition arrangement has been undermined, criticized, and rendered nearly impossible. In every way, the DA has been the most difficult coalition partner in this arrangement. Despite the fact that coalition survived on consultation, shared programs, and recognizing the contribution of each member, the DA has criticized and questioned my approach. Despite the DA only winning 38% of the vote in 2016, elements in the party, some, have expected me to govern arrogantly as if I have an outright majority. I have to deal with people who draw the artificial distinctions between service delivery in formal settlements and suburbs as a binary, either or type approach. I've had to deal with individuals who'd rather spend more time on cutting grass than on fixing our broken and aged infrastructure which threatens disaster in our city. I have to deal with people who do not want me to implement the insourcing program that has benefited over 7,000 families and contained contractual costs merely because it was not DA policy. My response to the DA was, then make it your policy. Unfortunately, it is these individuals who have triumphed at yesterday's Federal Council meeting. That is why I have no doubt whatsoever that the collapse of this governance arrangement is a foregone conclusion. It is not in my nature to wait for people to push me. I have lived my life on my terms. It is for this reason that I've called this press conference today to announce my resignation from the DA Democratic Alliance effective 27th November 2019. It is on the request of the party leadership that my resignation is held off until this date to afford them the opportunity to identify a new candidate to fill this position. By so doing, I will no longer serve as a Democratic Alliance councillor, and therefore I'm required to resign as Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg effective on the same date. I've given this decision considerable thought, and I've been tortured by the circumstances that have had to lead me to this moment. It is not in my nature to quit anything in life. I succeeded under the darkest days of our country's history when I was told that I could not be a businessman. However, I cannot be a willing participant in good conscience in a process that is placing the narrow internal interest of a political party ahead of the needs of the 5 million residents of our city, of the city of Johannesburg. The events of the past few months, and particularly this weekend, have required me to choose between my party and my country. I spent the past 3 years in governing, working tirelessly to rise above party politics in an attempt to unite a broad coalition. The events of this past weekends have left me at crossroads where I can no longer ignore the internal dynamics in the DA and the continued attempts to undermine my pro-poor agenda in the city of Johannesburg. I'm now in a position where I'm forced to choose between my party and my country. Ladies and gentlemen, as a patriot, I will always choose my country first. While the papers will spend many hours writing about who has won and lost this past weekend, the greatest loss belongs to the residents of Johannesburg and those who saw these arrangements as a brighter future for our country. Our multi-party coalition in Johannesburg achieved enormous feats in the past 3 years against all odds. Different political parties have put aside their differences and found common ground in the interest of our residents. This was possible because local government is a space where ideology matters less than service delivery. And ultimately, this is what our 5 million residents needed most. I'm also pleased to be leaving the city in a significantly healthier financial position. We ended 2018-2019 financial year with 5.3 billion rands in cash reserves and a sinking fund valued at 2.7 billion rands. This translates into 43 days worth of cash coverage, double the 21 days we closed on in the previous financial year, as all of you are aware. The significant reserves were not at the expense of service delivery, with the city spending 91.3% of its capital budget in the 2018-2019 financial year. I also believe that when the Auditor General releases his report at the end of November, this will result in improved audit outcomes for the City of Johannesburg. Our cutting back on frivolous expenditure through concerted austerity measures allowed us to increase the percentage of capital budget spend on engineering infrastructure and housing from 58% in 2016 when we took over to 71% in 2019, our current financial year. Arising from this, there's been a reduction of power outages in the homes of Johannesburg residents from 6.1 to 5.6 per household per annum. Our program of water pipeline replacements have reduced the number of leaks and bursts by over 4,000 per year, saving this precious commodity and reducing our losses. Over 900 kilometers of roads have been resurfaced out of the 4,000 of kilometers that lay poor and in very poor conditions. We have stabilized collapsing bridges, which have posed enormous stress to motorists across our city, most notably with the M2 freeway, which will be reopened in the first week of November. We have made major inroads in the billing crisis in Johannesburg, a program that existed for nearly 20 years. The number of queries every month has come down significantly. The backlogs have been reduced and the average time to resolve queries has been halved. Facilitated investment in the city has ballooned to 400% of where it stood when I entered office in 2016, rising from 4.5 billion rands in 2015-2016 to 17.3 billion rands in 2018-2019. For the first time in the history of this metro, business has been brought on board as a partner rather than an adversary, unleashing the private sector's potential to assist the city in addressing many of its challenges. We have extended the operating hours of 20 clinics across the city, which now operate late into the night and over weekends. Hundreds of patients have received life-saving treatment after hours, and mobile clinics now take the services to communities situated far from primary healthcare facilities. Under this multi-party government, the city's first free substance abuse facilities have been rolled out, with 5 now operating in communities most heavily afflicted by addiction. The Inner City project stands poised to transform the skyline of Johannesburg, with 139 properties awarded for development and construction beginning in the first term right now as we speak. Last week, Council approved the expropriation of 37 abandoned factories across the city, with the potential to produce heavy housing yields by virtue of the size of the stands. 16 of these are situated around Alexander, where the need of such initiatives are sorely needed. Our forensic unit, established under the leadership of General Sibia, has set the standard in the fight against corruption and wrongdoing. With over 6,000 cases under investigation, totaling more than 35 billion rands in expenditure, this unit has managed hundreds of arrests and dismissals of corrupt city officials. Our diversification of housing has seen the rollout of the largest site and service project in the history of the city, with more than 4,000 service stands due in this financial year alone. We have waged a war on the indignity of residents living without services in informal settlements, bringing more electricity and water to those communities than ever before. The city is close to welcoming 1,500 new JMPD officers who have been undergoing training since we initiated this recruitment in 2017. This will represent a 50% increase in the size of the JMPD force and greatly assist our efforts to bring law and order to the streets of our city of Johannesburg. In addition, Our specialized K9 narcotics unit, another first in Johannesburg, is currently waging war against drug dealers. In many ways, the most emotional and difficult part of what has transpired in the DA is that I will not be able to see some of these programs through to their finality. I'm fully aware that the DA constitution entitles the party to terminate my membership immediately following this announcement. That is their right. However, it is my hope that I will be allocated to see my work through to the end of November because there are many pressing matters that must be finalized. Tomorrow, as some of you might be aware, I'm due to appear before the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, which arises from my request for such an audience. I will be there to present how the city of Johannesburg and its residents are severely impacted by failing Home Affairs Department and its ability to protect the borders of our country. Next week, I will be lodging our court papers against the NPA to pave the way towards the private prosecution of those who have stolen from our residents and have been protected by the South African Police Services and the NPA. Also on the 30th of November, I'm due to hold the event to reopen the M1 following the extensive and emergency bridge repairs that have inconvenienced motorists since the beginning of this year. It remains the choice of the DA whether we'll get to see these projects through to finality. But it is my hope that I can be afforded the dignity of ensuring that nobody can reverse these very difficult gains. Ladies and gentlemen, serving as the mayor of Johannesburg has been the toughest job anyone can possibly undertake. I often joke with staff that saying to you that this gift job, you only give it to someone you dislike. It has, however, been the greatest honor of my life. I'm very much a human being and will be the first one to admit that I make mistakes. When human beings are trying to achieve enormous feats of change, they will always make mistakes. However, I live with my head held high, knowing that I've been honest, I've fought for the residents of the city, and I've taken every decision with their interest at heart rather than my own. I would like to thank my coalition partners who are here today, including the EFF, for their dedication to the work of delivering the dignity of change to our residents. I regret more than you that you will ever know that we will not get to see out this term of office together. Finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank the residents of Johannesburg for this great honor. And I'd really like to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I've achieved many things in my 60 years, but nothing will ever bring me the pride and joy of seeing our residents benefiting from the dignity of service delivery they have been denied over so many years by the ANC government over the last 25 years, including pre-1994, 300 years of colonial rule, including apartheid rule since 1948. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for really giving me this honor to really serve the city. And also, my money, thank you so much for this privilege and this honor from the DA for affording me this opportunity. Thank you very much.